This is Kali, Hindu goddess of destruction. She's the thing that you encounter. She's the thing that makes things go bump in the night. Okay, so let's talk about this image. It's a horrifying image. And so here's how this image emerged. It emerged in the imagination of people who were tormented for millennia about just what the hell lurked out there in the unknown. And some artist was seized by a revelation, a horrifying revelation of just what that was. Okay, so what is it? Well, first of all, she's in a container of fire. Why fire? Well, fire is useful and destructive, right? And you also cannot look away from fire. And so it's a really good symbol of that which you cannot look away from. It's eternally meaningful. Fire is eternally meaningful. Why? We can't keep our hands off fire, right? We're descendants of the first insane ape who was so obsessed by fire that he couldn't stay away from a burning landscape and learned how to master it. He's our forefather, that person. We're obsessed by fire. It's magical to us. And it transforms, it burns and transforms. So from a symbolic perspective, it's a very useful source of imagistic representation. Okay, the fire is there, and then inside the fire, these are skulls. You see them? All lined up there. So it's not just fire, it's the fire of death that consumes. So that's where Kelly lives. So that's fun to start with. And then there she is with her hair on fire, because her hair's on fire, in case she isn't frightening enough just because of where she lives. Her hair's on fire, and her headdress is made out of skulls. So that's nice. And then she's like an insect, like a spider. See, she has all these legs, and why is that? It's because we don't really like insects, and you know, they set off our bug detectors and they can bite us, and they're quite horrifying, and many people have spider phobias particularly, and no wonder. And then she's got a weapon in one hand here, and then you see she's eating something, and you see here her belly is concave. Well, why? Well, she's in a birth position. She's just given birth to this unfortunate character who she happens to be standing upon, and he's disemboweled, and she's eating him intestines first, and that's Kelly. It's like, that's horror. It's a representation of horror and death and destruction and transformation. It's feminine as well. What do you do in the face of it? It's Mother Nature. That's another negative element of Mother Nature. What do you do with something like this? Well, that's the eternal question. And the answer is quite straightforward. You make sacrifices to her. And if you make the proper sacrifices, then she turns into her beneficial counterpart. And that's exactly what you do in life. If in the face of horror and death, you make sacrifices, so you transform the terrible destructive element of nature into that thing that continually offers you what you need. That discovery is one of unparalleled brilliance. And you know, we don't get it. We think it's primitive. And no wonder, you know, you can understand human sacrifice. That sounds pretty primitive, man. It's terrifying. But the idea of sacrifice, it's an act of, the idea itself is a conceptualization of utter genius. And why do you expect it to come forward first in its perfect form? It's not going to do that. It's going to come forward imperfectly and roughly and brutally, and then hopefully be refined across time, which is exactly what has happened. You see, even in the biblical stories, the transition from human sacrifice to animal sacrifice. And then with us now, it's a transition from animal sacrifice to psychological sacrifice, because we're sophisticated enough to do that. We can let go of concepts and abstractions and things that we're holding on to that we should no longer hold on to, and progress in that manner. It's increasing articulated psychological sophistication. But we still make sacrifices, and we hope that they'll be accepted, and we hope that they're of high enough quality so that they work. Because the degree to which the terrible part of the world manifests itself in your life is proportionate to how insufficient you are. And we don't know the full extent of that. If you got your act together completely, maybe all the suffering would disappear from your life. Or at least maybe all the unbearable suffering. And maybe all the suffering or the unbearable suffering from the lives of people around you too. And you already know that, because there are people that you'll go to in a crisis that you can rely on, and you know they'll help you. And you wonder what the world would be like if you were like that and everyone else was like that too. We'd have a lot fewer crises. And the ones that we do have would be a lot more manageable. And so when people say, well, why is the world so rife with suffering? One answer to that is because we're not yet what we could be. And at least that's an answer that we have some control over, right? You're not going to talk God out of making the world suffer, that's for sure. And you're not going to negotiate directly with Mother Nature. But you might be able to put yourself together a little bit and see if that works. At least it's under your control. And God only knows what the upper limit of that might be.